We're moving and grooving here. Well, yeah, bitch. Oh my God, shut up. Well, hello. Welcome back to my channel. Joshana here to talk about some friggin' books. I only have 2 to talk about today. To my knowledge, I went through my list and these were the only 2 that I had notated that I needed to talk about that were HarperCollins books or imprints of HarperCollins that I had not done a more thorough review on. I feel like there was another one, but I can't remember it now. Man, I'm gonna be so pissed if I record this whole thing and then in 3 hours I'm like, oh shit. I'll do a little like editing Joshana vlog style one if I do remember. At any rate, the first one was actually a book I read in December of last year. I did mention that I read it, and that was A Merry Little Meet Cute by Julie Murphy and Sierra Simone. This is a contemporary romance, holiday themed, obviously. I had purchased it and read it, and then I actually already unhauled it. The cover is so cute though, oh my God. I had this on my Storygraph as a booktube recommendation. Mara talking about it over at Books Like Whoa. She had read this and discussed it and enjoyed it. And I was just looking for some more holiday rom-com-esque, you know, those types of vibes books. And I picked this one up and I did quite enjoy it. I didn't love it, but I liked it a decent amount. And initially, I actually put it as a 3.75 rating, but I have lowered it slightly to a 3.5, which is still a really solid rating for me. 3 is just middle of the road. It was fine. I'm not mad I read it, but like, did it strike me in any kind of particularly important or meaningful or memorable way? No, not really. So 3.5 is like, I like this. Like, I had a solid, good enough time with this. Not something I love, might not be something I'm ever gonna reread, could be or could not be, but I enjoyed it. And I really liked the 2 main characters, Bea and Nolan. I really enjoyed their chemistry together. You kind of need that to enjoy a romance, and I did, so yay for that. And I also really liked the side characters. There's a lot of really fun, lively side characters in this, the friends and coworkers and things. I wasn't particularly attached to anyone. I didn't love any of the characters necessarily, even the 2 main characters, but again, I liked them. They were fun enough to read about. And I did think this was a page turner. I was intrigued with the storyline enough to want to know what's going to happen next and how this is all going to unfold. One thing with the plot that I did find a little unbelievable was the whole, and this isn't a spoiler, it's like in the synopsis and everything, the whole thing about Uncle, or what was his name? Uncle Ray Ray, yeah. Uncle Ray Ray was the porn producer name, but then Teddy is his actual name, and that's what he was going by to try to like be sneaky and like no one will know that we all work in porn. But they referenced several times in this book how everyone knows everything and everyone in Hollywood. Like, there are no secrets in Hollywood. And especially in this day and age with where this story is, you know, being told, with the internet how it is, I just found it pretty unbelievable that nobody would have any idea who Teddy actually was. And the other porn people that were on set, the like makeup artists, costumes, like whoever, the side characters that were also from the porn industry, they were supposedly told to keep this super hush-hush. No one can know. But then they all of them continuously mentioned porn stuff to the other people on set who weren't from the porn industry. Like, they just kind of seemed like dumb teenagers, because they're just like, oh, well, that's what we use when we do strap-on dildos. And then the other person would be like, what? And they're like, oh, never mind. It's a joke or whatever. But they like kept having like verbal slip-ups like that and referencing porn stuff. And like, they didn't seem to like, they were just doing it very casually. So I was like, I thought you guys were told to keep this super secret. And like, the costume person showed up with a box of porn set things. And again, I was like, why would you bring that if you were told that no one can know we work in porn? So that was a little bit unbelievable, but like, it was still a fun enough storyline otherwise. It was just that plot thing that just kind of bugged me. There's a lot of messaging in this about how women are treated in the media spotlight versus how men are treated. And particularly in this story, we're focusing on fat women and sex workers are unfairly judged for doing things compared to other people. And there was a lot of conversation about that going on, and I appreciated that. I thought that the messaging was woven into the story well, and I don't know, in a way that made sense, and I just think it worked well. So yeah, overall I enjoyed this. This isn't something I see myself rereading, hence I unhauled it. Like, I do tend to kind of find Christmas books and like reread them around the holiday season, but this is one that, while I did have a good enough time with it, it was just kind of fine in the end. That's why I lowered the rating slightly. But I would recommend, if you're in the mood for a holiday rom-com that's a little more spicy and, you know, modern and kind of fun in that regard, I would pick this up and check it out. The next one was The Daughters of Izdihar by Hadir Elsbai. I got a NetGalley e-arc of this. I read this in January, in the beginning of January. I finished it on January 9th, apparently. And this one I didn't love as much as I thought it was going to. I still enjoyed it. I gave this one 3 stars, which, as I have explained, that's just a very middle of the road for me. It's young adult, and this is the thing, is I honestly probably would have given this a lower rating. As far as my overall enjoyment, it would be like a 2.5 probably, like my personal enjoyment. I was annoyed a lot reading this book. However, I still gave it 3 because one of the big things that was driving me nuts is something that I think makes sense for a book aimed at a younger audience. I'm not saying I think teenagers are stupid idiots and need things spelled out for them, but it makes sense to have like the messaging of a book, the thematic elements, be a little bit more obvious and like a little bit more spelled out, a little bit more on the nose. It makes sense. Not that kids are dumb and can't pick up on messaging, but they you know, their brains aren't as fully developed and whatever, and they maybe haven't learned the nuances of picking up these context clues of things. So like, you often see books aimed at a younger audience are a little bit more on the nose with, hey, this is the message we're trying to portray to you, right? And that's fine, and that's good, and it makes sense. As an older reader, it annoys me sometimes. Oh my God, it annoys me when I'm reading a book and it's just, you're repeating the messaging and it's so on the nose. You're kind of beating me over the head with it a little bit. It drives me nuts. It drives me nuts. Now, this book didn't do that to that degree where I was like, oh my God, shut up. But it did do it to a degree where I was like, I get it. And the messaging, the one of my pros I put was that I do agree and I appreciate the messaging of feminism, women fighting back against oppressors, people in general, but in this case specifically, women fighting back for equal fucking rights, fighting for freedoms and just, yeah, human rights. You know, I love that. I love that messaging. And like I said, for the audience, I thought it was explored well. Did it kind of grate on my nerves a couple of times? Yeah. And another positive I will say, you know, one positive is I agreed with the messaging. I like the messaging. Another one is I found the pacing to be really solid. This is pretty plot driven in my opinion. You do get to know the characters a lot and stuff, but like what is moving the story forward is plot things that are happening. And I thought it was pretty action packed and exciting as far as the plot goes. Like, there was always stuff happening. I did not feel like this dragged at any point where I was like, all right, can we get on with this chapter? Not at all. It was very like, we're moving and grooving here. And not like too fast. It just, I thought it was really solid, exciting, a page turner. And I definitely can see, I've already seen some really positive reviews. I can definitely see there being an audience that is going to really love this, a very large audience who are going to thoroughly enjoy this story and these characters and get really engrossed in this world and what's going on here. Like I said, it wasn't my favorite. I didn't hate it. I definitely did not hate it. But yeah, it's like just very middle of the road for me. Again, on a personal level, 2.5, 2.75 maybe, because I'm going to get into what I was very annoyed with. But I would recommend this to anyone who, if the premise sounds interesting to you, pick this up, because there's a high likelihood that you're gonna really enjoy it. So my cons, the big thing that like really stopped me from loving this or like I'm DNFing the series. I'm not going to continue with the series because the characters, they drove me nuts. They drove me nuts. Oh my God. And again, teenagers are going to be teenagers, and that's good and fine. And I don't begrudge a book aimed at teenagers showing teenagers being teenagers, right? But like, it's when, again, it's like so aggressive and so over the top. And it wasn't all just teenagers either behaving in these ways that drove me fucking crazy. The biggest thing I think was Nahal, one of the main characters. She is very, very privileged, okay? And she's all like, yeah, she's like being an ally, kind of, and trying to like help this cause from her place of privilege. But she's so insufferably naive and like, oh, just the worst depiction, just the worst, like such a good example, I guess, of the ally that like doesn't actually help and just kind of makes things worse because they're so like dumb and unaware and like refusing to learn, like that they're coming from a place of privilege. They can do things that other people cannot. They can move about in the world more bravely, but it's because of the privilege you have, right? Like, it'd be like me as a little white girl going and like mouthing off to a police officer and then expecting a person of color to do that and be like, well, why don't you? Like me, I do it. Well, yeah, bitch, you have a little bit of privilege here. You're gonna probably get treated slightly better in this situation. And Nahal just like kept doing shit and being like, look at me doing all these brave things. And like it was like annoying me because there were so many instances where she should have learned the lesson, where people were point blank telling her, hey girl, yeah, it's because you have all this privilege. And she would act like in the book, it would be like, oh, she reflected on this. And then she does the same shit again. And I was like, okay, oh my God, stop. Like, if you're gonna have the character learn the lesson, have them learn the fucking lesson. And if you're not gonna have them learn it, then don't show them like thinking on this situation and like, oh, don't show them doing that. Show them to just continue being an idiot. You know, like, which would still annoy me, but like, at least it would make more sense. I just felt like it didn't make sense that she just kept doing this shit and like kept learning the lesson, but then not. And I'm like, wait, what are we doing here? It was driving me crazy. And I did kind of find myself annoyed with basically all of the characters at one point or another, any of like the main characters we were following, for basically being kind of dumb, like being kind of stupid. And I want to try to explain this as clearly as I can without coming across a certain way. Because I don't want it to sound like I think, because again, it's like revolution and like fighting for rights. I don't want this to come across like I'm saying they should have just protested peacefully. That's all they should do. Absolutely not. 0% do I think that. Protesting peacefully, you know, marching and things for causes is great, right? That's a great tool, but often that only goes so far, and some force ends up becoming necessary in a lot of these kinds of things. Historically, we've seen it time and time again, and I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I think sometimes like you can only turn the cheek so many times before it's like, okay, we're gonna fight back. We are actually going to be aggressive in this fight, and we're not just gonna sit here and lie down while you keep like killing us and shit, right? So just want to put that out there. But in this story, so we have all these people actively involved in this kind of this movement, this cause. And I understand that if you're going to be in a situation like this and you're going to be fighting and just like going up against brick walls just all the time, you're going to have moments. People are going to have emotional outbursts, right? You're going to have a fuck this shit moment where you might not be thinking clearly and you might do something that actually ends up being kind of detrimental to your cause. But like, you're just like, fuck this shit. I can't fucking deal with this anymore. I get that. That's going to happen. But every single one of these characters did this like more than once. Some of them many times. Just really, really stupid, rash decisions in the heat of the moment with like completely emotionally and without any forethought that ended up being very detrimental to their overall cause and like just not helping at all. And again, I want to reiterate, I'm not saying that women or people in general need to be meek and mild and like just perfect, right? When you're fighting for a cause, when you're oppressed, like 0%. And yes, sometimes you get emotional, sometimes you just react. That is natural human instinct. But like they were organizing things. It was an organized movement. And I just was like, where are the people that are making smart decisions? And again, sure, sometimes like you have to be smart about how you're fighting back, right? If it's just like verbally, like verbal sparring, some verbal clapbacks, I love a good, well-placed, fuck you, verbal clapback. I love that shit. Shazi from The Wrath and the Dawn, love that bitch for that very reason. She does not just sit there and take it if someone is talking shit or saying some misogynistic shit in front of her. She responds, but she thinks about what she's saying, and she has a very clever retort to put someone in their place. I love that. Love it. But a emotional outburst, rash, screaming and slamming shit down on a table and just like unhinged yelling at someone, not so much. That doesn't do anything. And again, when it's repetitive and it's just over and over and we keep doing this. And like I said, sometimes force or aggression is necessary. Acts of violence can become very necessary, whether it's in defense or on the offense. I love seeing a well thought out, purposeful, intentional act of aggression or violence or whatever. The Hunger Games, blowing up the dam and fucking up the Capitol shit. Like, that was an act of aggression. That was, they set off bombs. People were killed. But it was thought out and it was smart and it had a point, right? Like I said, fucking fight back, fully rebel, organize, wreak havoc if you need to. Sometimes it's necessary in these kinds of situations. But again, not a tantrum that ends up, doing damage, collateral damage, and the point of it was nothing other than someone's emotional outburst tantrum moment. And now it's like, oh, well, fuck, that just happened, and there was not really any point to it, and it just made us look fucking terrible, and like, it just all bad. And again, I think it was ultimately just that it was repetitive. That if this had happened like once or twice, it wouldn't have bothered me as much. It would have been like, oh, that makes sense. Like someone just kind of fucking snapped, that's gonna happen from time to time. But it was like just multiple characters, and then it kept happening, and I was like, when are we gonna stop doing this? So yeah, that is what like brought down my enjoyment. And there were times where they did like organize and have a plan and whatever, and sometimes shit goes sideways, and that happens. That annoyed me too, though. The like leader of this group, they had this big plan and like to be peaceful and whatever, and then some shit went sideways. But this woman who was leading this group for all these many years or whatever, she acted like stunned, like completely stunned and shocked, like, what? It went bad and what? And I was like, you're leading a fucking rebel like organization and you didn't at all think this shit could go bad. Like, you have to plan for everything. You can't like just living in this little like, no, it'll be fine. It'll be great. And then like, oh my God, it wasn't perfect. What? I just can't. I can't. And I might be being a little harsh, whatever, it's fine. Like I said, I can see a lot of people really enjoying this because the things that annoyed me, I think, are very personal things that, like, I probably dramatized in my head, maybe, like, or, like, it stuck out to me more than it would stick out to other people, where maybe other people would read it and just, like, not be picking it up the way, not that they're, like, not picking it up, but, like, it just sticks out to me more, if that makes sense. If, we're all readers, we're all different. So many times this happens where, like, reading a book with my friends and I'm like, this one particular thing really annoyed me, and they're like, I didn't even notice that. Or vice versa, where someone's like, this whole thing about this book drove me crazy, and I was like, I love that book, I didn't even notice that. So again, if the premise of this book sounds at all intriguing, I will say it's very exciting, good pacing throughout. I do enjoy the messaging of it, and like, I didn't think it was a bad book by any means. It just kind of bugged me, these elements to it. So just brought my personal enjoyment down a bit, brought my reading experience down slightly. But again, I can see a lot of people really loving this. I gave it 3 stars. Not a bad rating at all. Just not what I thought. I thought I was going to rate it higher. You know what I mean? So I guess it would be like a disappointing read, even though very middle of the road. Very like, it's fine. I'm not mad that I read it. there were just elements to it that made me be like, I can't continue with these characters. But there we are. Like, comment, and subscribe, of course, if you feel so inclined and you have not already. Ring the little bell, wherever the hell it is, if you want to make sure you don't miss any of my videos in the YouTube algorithm. As always, thank you so much for your time. Hope you all have a wonderful day, and I will talk to you later. Bye-bye.